I was 8 the first time I ever wore a dress. It was for a Halloween party, and I showed up as little Bo Peep. What did I know? I was just a kid, but once I had that costume on, something stirred inside me, and I realized I enjoyed it more than a little. I kept wearing that outfit for almost a full week after the party, until Mom finally said I had to stop. The next time happened when I was 12, taking on another storybook role, this time as Snow White. Yet again, something clicked when Mom styled my hair and put on my makeup. I wasn't sure what it was, only that I liked it. But when Mom finished with the makeup and brushed my hair, the feelings swelled, telling me that dressing as a girl just felt right. Naturally, I stayed quiet, went to the party, made little fuss about wearing a dress, and had a blast. Still, deep down, I knew I'd do it again, likely on a day that wasn't Halloween. About 3 months later, I got the chance and seized it right away. I borrowed a blouse and skirt from my sister, doing my best to look right, which was terrible, honestly, but the satisfaction outweighed the fear of getting caught. It only lasted an hour and felt like forever, yet I was completely relaxed in those clothes, certain I needed to do it again. And I did, more and more often, taking a reckless gamble that turned into an addiction. Those short, thrilling times where I dressed up and strutted around became something I couldn't stop. The more often I did it, the more I craved it, and the more I craved it, the more often I got dressed, leading to some crazy ideas, like leaving my room while dressed as a girl. I held those thoughts at bay, using common sense instead of pure desire, staying in my room whenever I donned girl clothes. My sister Evelyn is 5 years older than me, and like Mom, she never throws anything away, so her closet was packed with things she no longer wore or had outgrown. That was a dream come true for me. Figuring she wouldn't miss a few items, I took some of her older things, a bra, slip, a few skirts, a couple of blouses, plus 3 pairs of shoes that happened to fit me. I hadn't thought of how to hide them, so I stuffed everything into a box under my bed. Not exactly a genius plan. I kept at this until I was 14 and thought I'd become a whiz at makeup. I let my hair grow, had my ears pierced, and felt so confident I was sure that if I showed up somewhere dressed as a girl, no one would suspect a thing. In my delusion, I nearly did just that, but I got nervous and chickened out. A month later, fully dressed in my room, I examined myself, trying to spot any flaw, but of course I saw none. I almost stepped outside, only to freeze under a wave of overwhelming fear. While I was changing out of the dress, my bedroom door opened, and Mom walked right in. I was standing there in a bra, panties, and pantyhose, with a full face of makeup, hair in a ponytail, and earrings dangling. There wasn't much left to say about what I was doing. I expected a furious lecture and prepared for the worst. "You better clean up, honey," was all she said. "It's almost dinner time." Then she left. I tore off the clothes as fast as possible, hopped into the shower, and scrubbed away every bit of makeup. Then I crammed my girl stuff back into the box, threw on jeans and a t-shirt, and went downstairs for dinner. Mom never said a word about it. Through the entire meal, I stayed on edge, anticipating some remark, but she let it go, and life seemed normal again a few days later. Over the next few months, Evelyn graduated, turned 18, and left to roam who knows where with her boyfriend. Then, about a month after she took off, Dad had a heart attack, followed by a brutal stroke that left him unable to control his body. We had no choice but to place him in a nursing home. That kind of thing shouldn't happen to a guy only 37 years old, but it did, and my well-ordered life fell apart so quickly. It was just Mom and me rattling around in that huge, empty house. Everything felt terrible as we both struggled to deal with Dad's condition. After seeing him bedridden and unable to do more than blink, my cross-dressing worries seemed insignificant. All I cared about was Dad. It was obvious we couldn't keep living in that big old place, so Mom listed it. It sold in 5 days, leaving us only a few months to find somewhere new. While clearing out and packing, we threw away a mountain of junk every household collects. When we got to Evelyn's room, I half expected Mom to toss or donate her clothes, but she packed them neatly in boxes, leaving them in there. I didn't ask why. I was just glad she kept them. We moved to a smaller house across town, meaning I left my school and friends behind. When the last moving truck was gone, Mom and I headed to the new house to direct unloading. She let me have the biggest bedroom, and while the movers brought everything in, she had Evelyn's stuff put into my room along with some of Evelyn's furniture, including her vanity. That felt strange, but I didn't question it. Part of me was worried about what it meant, so I said nothing. It took us a week to get the house into shape. Finally, I asked Mom why she put Evelyn's belongings in my room. "So you can use them, of course," she said. "What a silly question. But I don't need. If you're going to keep dressing the way you were," she said, "you'll probably want a lot of what Evelyn left behind. If you don't use it, you can ignore it." I didn't really need everything Evelyn had outgrown, but I did like dressing up now and then, and I still wanted to walk outside as a girl someday. Mom understood how I felt, and she obviously suspected I might need more than just a few skirts. Still, I was unsure why she was openly giving me all of Evelyn's stuff. She wouldn't have done that if she didn't grasp more than I did, so I didn't complain. While unpacking, she hinted that she'd like to see me all dressed up, but I was so worried about showing her how cute I was. Cute in my mind, anyway. 2 weeks into living there, Mom casually mentioned, almost offhand, how much she'd love to meet that girl I'd been hiding in my closet, and caught me daydreaming about the same thing. Dressed up, I mean. I just stayed quiet, but her bright, smiling eyes told me she already knew what I was thinking. "Why don't you go get changed?" Mom said, eyeing me. "I'll wait right here." I just gaped at her. "Go on, honey. We're not heading anywhere. It's only you and me, and I really want to see how you look when you're not trembling with fear." It wasn't even a contest. I agreed almost instantly and hurried to my room, determined to do my best this time. For over an hour, I showered, did my makeup, and picked out an outfit: a short blue skirt with a pale green blouse. My legs looked great in pantyhose, and even better once I slipped into low white heels. I finished with earrings and a little lipstick, then spent a few moments looking at myself in the mirror, bracing for the fact that I'd have to reveal myself to Mom. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of my room and forced myself toward the family room. My feet felt like lead, my mouth was dry, and I was sweating, but I kept going and fought the urge to dash back and hide in my room. I spotted Mom first, then took one more step. She saw me and I froze. Mom didn't speak at first. She simply gestured for me to spin around. When our gazes met again, she was smiling. "You look lovely, dear. With a bit of practice, you'll look fantastic. It might be a useful skill one day, being able to be a girl when you want." I had no idea what that meant, so I let it go. "Want my help?" she asked. "I can tidy up your makeup, maybe fix your hair a bit better, and we might find a better color combo for you." I followed her to my bedroom, and under her guidance, I washed off my makeup and sat at the vanity, watching while she showed me the proper way to apply everything. She had me looking better in 20 minutes than I'd ever managed on my own, and I was thrilled at how straightforward it all was once you knew how. Then she brushed out my hair still wet from the shower and used a curling iron here and there, so quickly transforming my appearance with hardly any effort. Without that severe ponytail, my face looked softer, and she gave me such an innocent look using subtle makeup. We replaced my blouse with a thin white top, and when I glanced in the mirror again, I couldn't help but grin. As great as I'd thought my solo attempts were, I now realized I'd looked more like a clown. Thank goodness I never walked outside looking that way. Mom's help proved I still had a lot to learn about being a girl. I stood there, practically buzzing with joy at the reflection before me, reluctant to take those clothes off yet also too shy to ask Mom if I could stay dressed this way. She simply mentioned she had errands to run, found an old purse for me, told me to put my things inside it, then asked me to meet her in the kitchen. Me, leave the house like this. It was both my wildest dream and my biggest nightmare. In the end, I transferred my wallet and lipstick into that purse and joined her in the kitchen. Without another word, she walked to the car, waiting while I summoned the courage to take that final step. I dashed to the passenger seat, nearly hiding under the dashboard as we backed out. Mom told me to sit up, so I did, although I never fully relaxed while she drove to the dry cleaner, the post office, and a drugstore. I stayed in the car the first 2 stops, but she insisted I go inside the drugstore with her, where we browsed the cosmetics aisle, picking up some new foundation and better eyeshadow for me. I was so sure everyone there knew the truth, even though nobody batted an eye. I was shaking by the time we got back in the car. On the way home, the worst thing happened. The cops pulled us over. I was positive someone had spotted me as a boy in a skirt and called the police. Mom rolled down her window, and the officer glanced briefly my way before speaking. "Ma'am, do you know Evelyn?" "Yes, she's my daughter. Why?" "She's in jail," he said, "and she's asked us to contact you. We tried calling your old number, but it was disconnected. I only tracked you down by running your plates, and I've been keeping an eye out for your car. Can you come see her? She's in serious trouble, ma'am." "We'll follow you, if that's all right," Mom replied, to my absolute horror. He nodded and we followed him. On the way, I freaked out. "Mom, have you lost your mind? I'm dressed like a girl, what if they arrest me or something?" She looked at me calmly. "I doubt that. You look just adorable. So if you behave like any normal girl, no one will suspect. And this is about Evelyn, not you. But we do need a name for you. Scott obviously won't do." "I don't have one," I gasped. "Then I get to pick," she said. "How about Tina?" "No, Mary." No, let's call you Sabrina." So that's how I got my name on the way to a jailhouse. We went inside, and it was packed with all kinds of people. Evelyn's lawyer was waiting, and the officer pointed him out to us. "Your daughter is in very big trouble," he said. "She and her boyfriend robbed a bank this morning, and a guard was killed in the process. Her boyfriend took off, leaving her on the sidewalk holding the murder weapon. She refuses to believe he did that, insists he'll show up to confess. I've tried to convince her to help the police, but she's clamming up, refusing to reveal what she knows about him. Honestly, I doubt she knows enough to matter at this point, but it's still worth trying. He left her there with a gun. Why would she think he'll come back and save her? Maybe you two can talk sense into her, because I sure can't." Mom went in to see Evelyn while I waited with the lawyer, petrified someone would figure out I wasn't a real girl. It took about an hour before Mom returned, looking troubled. Evelyn still imagines her boyfriend will rescue her, but I think she's starting to grasp reality. Maybe in a few days, she'll decide to cooperate. If not, what are her odds? "Not good," the lawyer said. "Shooting a police officer on or off duty is first-degree murder in this state, which can carry the death penalty. She was there, fully involved in the robbery, and was caught holding the gun. If she doesn't work with the police, she might face the death chamber. Even if she cooperates, she'll still be locked away a long time. Life without parole is likely." Turning to me, he asked, "Would you like to speak with your sister?" I almost refused, but Mom nudged me to go, telling me to be honest with Evelyn. I was escorted by a female guard to a cramped room, where I sat across from my sister at a small table. Evelyn looked downright miserable in those orange coveralls, like a sad pumpkin. For a second, she didn't recognize me, then her face lit up and she sat. "You've changed," she said, "and for the better, I think." "Evelyn, you've got to cooperate," I pleaded. "Your lawyer said you might be executed for killing a policeman." She stared off like she hadn't heard me, then abruptly asked, "What should I call you now?" "Sabrina." "Sabrina, I like it. It suits you." Then, like flipping a switch, she added, "Joshua promised he'd never leave me, that we'd be together forever, that he loved me." "Yeah, sure," I said, not hiding my cynicism, "but you're stuck in here while he's out there. Doesn't that tell you something? He faces the death penalty himself. Why would he ever surrender? I bet you'll never see him again, unless it's on a news broadcast. Evelyn, wake up. If you don't want a lethal injection, you'd better say everything you know, and do it fast." She sighed and straightened up. "You really do look sweet, Sabrina. Don't let reality squash your dreams the way I did. If you want to be a girl, you go be a girl, and don't let anyone hassle you. Got it?" I nodded, telling her about Dad's condition, just before the guard told me I had to leave. That antiseptic smell and those lifeless grey walls pressed down on me. I felt sorry for her. She'd end up in prison, no doubt about it. The only question was how many decades she'd serve. All her life, Evelyn chased guys who seemed shady, as if danger was the only thing that excited her. Joshua was the worst, but she dismissed every warning and left with him anyway. In my view, she probably hadn't even known he was robbing that bank, and she definitely hadn't pulled the trigger, but she was there and never tried to stop him. That made her a willing participant. It felt like one more tragic punch thrown at our family, and there was nothing Mom or I could do to stop it. Seeing Evelyn stuck in a place like that, right after seeing Dad bedridden, made me grasp again that my need to dress like a girl wasn't the biggest problem in the grand scheme of things, which, strangely, made me feel slightly better. It was quiet at home that night. I stayed in girl clothes until bedtime, but lay awake wondering what awful twist might come next. The next morning at breakfast, Mom sighed and spoke through tears. "It's just you and me now, Scott." She broke down completely, tears rolling down her cheeks. Between sobs, she said, "I've decided we should both enjoy life as much as we can. If you want to be a girl all the time, then do it. Life's so short, anything can happen any second. Just look at us. I don't care about other people's opinions anymore. If you feel the urge to become a girl, I see no reason to stop you." She was granting me my deepest wish, but I felt torn, like I'd be exploiting our tragedy to get what I wanted. I just said I'd think about it. We'd both been through so much, and here was my dream offered up so easily. Part of me worried that getting exactly what I wanted while Dad and Evelyn suffered was unfair. Still, after 3 days, I showed up at breakfast as Sabrina. Mom didn't blink, she just started calling me by my new name. I knew my appearance was still clumsy, but she patiently taught me how to apply light makeup, foundation, powder, a subtle lipstick, and how most girls my age wore very little anyway. I had on an old pair of jeans, sneakers, and a white top with little blue flowers, held my hair back with a headband, and tried not to panic. Yet with Evelyn in jail and Dad in a home, I felt guilty about enjoying something that was purely for myself. I stuck with it though. Mom was busy cleaning, and finally told me, "Go outside, you're in my way." I'd never been outside on my own while dressed as a girl, so my stomach knotted when I looked at the front door. "I'm not letting you spend your life indoors, Sabrina," she said. "If you don't want to go out as a girl, then change clothes. But if you do switch back, will that help you? What I mean is, if you don't do it now, you might never find the courage. And you don't really want that, do you?" With a ball of nerves swirling in my gut, I took one last glance at her, saw her reassuring smile, and opened the door. The sunshine was warm, the air smelled fresh, a perfect summer day. I walked around the front yard, checked both ways, saw no one, and set off down our short street. Nobody was out, so I enjoyed the taste of freedom being a girl gave me. At the end of the block, workers were hammering nails on a new house, pouring concrete. I stopped to watch for a moment when a girl about my age, with straight brown hair, stepped out from behind a truck. She noticed me, waved, then ran across the road. "Hi, I'm Peggy. My family is moving here once the house is done. Do you live around here?" Hi, I'm Sabrina, I managed. "I live just down the street." "This is awesome," she said excitedly. "I was sure I'd be the only girl on this street. I have to run, but my mom and I come by every day, so maybe I'll see you again." She gave me a quick hug and went back to her mom, who was waiting in their car. As I watched them leave, my heart pounded. Peggy would be looking for me every time she returned, expecting a girl named Sabrina, not a boy called Scott. I kept walking, mind racing, and almost missed the guy on his bike until the front wheel screeched right in front of me. "Just what I need," he said with a smug grin. "Another chick to add to my stable." "I'm not a chick," I snapped, "and I'm definitely not part of your stable, so get out of my way." "You look hot to me, babe," he said, "and you'll change your mind eventually. Just ask for Neil. I'll be waiting." "Don't hold your breath," I muttered, pushing his bike aside and walking off. Thankfully, he didn't follow me. By the time I got home, my nerves were fried. I'd met a new neighbor girl, someone who assumed I was female, and then a neighborhood jerk who wanted to hit on me. Neither knew the truth. I told Mom all about it, but she seemed pleased, insisting it'd be fine. She clearly wasn't worried the entire neighborhood already saw me as a girl. I headed to my room, deciding to try on everything in my closet since it was all mine. From that day on, Mom encouraged me, maybe push is the right word, to dress as a girl every day, explaining that constant practice would help me do my hair and makeup without help. Since the neighborhood was only half full of people anyway, and I had the chance to do what I truly wanted, I didn't need much convincing. I packed away my boy clothes. Mom bought me more skirts, tops, jeans, and shoes, and let me choose what to wear daily, though if I picked a mismatched outfit, I get a certain disapproving look. Not long after, there was a knock on the door. I opened it to find Peggy and her mother there. "Hi," Peggy grinned. "This is my mom. We were hoping to meet you and your mom. We'll be neighbors soon, and we just—" "Who is it, honey?" Mom called. "It's Peggy and her mom," I answered. I stepped aside to let them in, silently panicking over the fact that they also believed me to be a girl. School would start that fall, and I'd have to figure out how to be Scott again or not. Still wearing one of my shortest skirts, a green and blue one, and a thin white top, with my hair in a page boy and gold earrings, I couldn't just claim I was playing dress-up. Peggy had already met me twice. Our mothers clicked right away, and they went off to chat while Peggy and I stood there. Finally, she spoke. "Sabrina, are there any boys in this neighborhood? I haven't seen even one. Maybe this will end up as an all-girls street." "There's this guy Neil, who thinks he's a gift all girls are waiting on," I said. "He lives around the block, I guess. I'm pretty sure you won't like him." "I sure don't." "Then let's go find him, set him straight," she suggested. I hesitated, but she insisted. "Come on, Sabrina, we'll drive him crazy. It'll be fun." I didn't exactly want to provoke Neil, but Peggy was excited, so I agreed. We walked down the block. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, my mom told Tina, Peggy's mom, "Sabrina is a little unusual." "Unusual?" Tina asked. "How do you mean?" "She's my son," Mom said quietly, "but Sabrina presents as a girl. She's been like that since she was small, and after everything that happened with her father and sister, I felt she shouldn't be forced to live by anyone else's rules." Tina thought it over. "Well, from what I see, she sure passes as an ordinary teenage girl. You won't have trouble from me. She's welcome at our place any time. I'm just not sure how or when to tell Peggy." Mom nodded. "Maybe Sabrina will tell her soon. Best if we stay out of it." Peggy and I turned a corner and spotted Neil, astride his bike smack in the middle of the street. He looked older, bigger, with short, spiked blonde hair and a black half-glove on his left hand. He seemed delighted to see us and pedaled closer. I froze, but Peggy marched right up to him. "Word is you think you're some hotshot," she said, and he sneered back. "Girls always come around to me eventually," he boasted, "and you will too." "Well, from where I stand," Peggy said evenly, "you're a bully and a blowhard. So do yourself a favor and stay out of my face and Sabrina's, or it won't end well for you. I don't want to hurt you, but I will." He hopped off his bike, all set to say something. "You hurt me. A tiny girl like you." But his arrogance was short-lived. I never even saw Peggy's hand move before Neil crashed onto the pavement. He was clutching his shoulder, groaning. "Listen here," Peggy told him. "I've studied karate basically since I could walk. Putting you down doesn't even make me sweat. So keep your distance from us, got it?" She turned away, and I hurried after her, rounding another corner. I was beyond impressed. If she could toss Neil around like that, what might happen to me if she found out I was really a boy? Would I be the next one lying on the pavement? I already liked her, but knew I needed to come clean, or she'd eventually feel betrayed. There was no way around it. Once we were far enough away, I swallowed my fear. "Peggy," I whispered, "I have something to tell you, and I hope you won't hate me." She halted. "What is it?" As a nearby crane lifted roof beams into place, I took a deep breath. "I'm not actually a girl," I said in a rush. She stared at me. No way. I'd know if you were a boy. Boys can't just become girls this easily, looking so natural. I said softly, worried she might flip out. I really hope you're not mad at me. It's just, my dad got sick, my sister's in jail, and all at once, tears flooded my eyes. I spilled every detail about Dad, Evelyn, my desire to wear dresses. Peggy listened with sympathy, and when I finally stopped talking, she hugged me. Sabrina, you're the first friend I've felt close to since we moved here, she said. I'm not into guys drooling over me, so I was thrilled to meet you, thinking I'd found a true friend. I don't mind at all if you're really a boy if you say you're a girl. Then, as far as I'm concerned, you are. I just want us to stay friends. Besides, how else will I keep Neil under control without you by my side? We laughed, relieved. We reached my house and found our moms already bonding. Peggy told them all about us confronting Neil, and we all cracked up. Before leaving, Peggy and her mom invited me to lunch the next day. Mom said it was fine, so I said yes, and then they headed off. Alone with Mom, I confessed that I'd told Peggy everything. She's okay with it, I said, grateful. She wants to stay friends. That's good, Mom smiled. It's always nice to have someone in your corner. That night we saw a news report. Evelyn's boyfriend Joshua had been located, or nearly. Evelyn told the cops where he might be, and they raided the place, but he wasn't there at first. Just as the police were leaving, Joshua showed up and opened fire with a small machine gun, wounding 2 officers before getting shot dead by at least 17 bullets. Now Evelyn would stand alone. His decision to shoot more cops obviously wouldn't help her case, since she waited so long to cooperate. Mom and I locked eyes, realizing Evelyn had just sealed her fate. Mom silently slipped off to her room, probably to cry. Dad in a nursing home, Evelyn heading to prison. It all weighed on me, though paradoxically made me see my own worries about dressing as relatively minor. Mom cried a lot during those days. We both lost so much so quickly. I felt guilty that I, at least, was getting something I wanted. I tiptoed into her room, where she sat, eyes red and tear-streaked, weighed down by the shame of a daughter in prison and a husband in a home. Their retirement dreams shattered. No grandkids from Evelyn, no tropical vacations. And now me, a son wanting to live as a girl. I knew it must feel like one more punch in the gut. I hovered in the doorway, unsure, until Mom opened her arms for me. I rushed to her, hugging tight, tears mixing, shutting out the world until only we remained. After a long moment, she spoke quietly. Sabrina, she said, the media will be swarming all over Evelyn's case, and I'm scared they'll find out about you, making you the next big headline. You'd never have any peace. I'm not sure what to do. I raised my hand to stop her. Mom, if all they see is Evelyn's younger sister, maybe it won't be such a big deal. She told me herself I should be who I want to be, so I bet she won't out me. But if my old classmates start talking and someone tells the press I'm not really a girl, what then? Mom sighed, we have to tackle it head on. But if you want to go put on boy clothes right now, I can't stop you. I stood, ready to leave. If that's what you need, I'll do it. No, she said, I can't ask you to hide again. We agreed not to let anyone else decide how you live your life. If you think you can handle the media as Sabrina, I'm with you. But you'll have to be strong, and if they do figure out the truth, you'll have to talk to them or they'll never leave you alone. With Evelyn in jail and you living as a girl, they'll turn us into the perfect, dysfunctional family if we aren't careful. She grabbed the phone, dialed a number. Sarah, it's me. I need to see you today, if you can. Great, we'll be there in half an hour. That's our lawyer, Mom explained, hanging up. Touch up your makeup, brush your hair. We don't want to be late. Sarah welcomed us into his office. Mom explained everything, how I was living as a girl, that we expected a media storm with Evelyn's trial, and how we feared it could spiral if people learned my background. Sarah didn't blink when Mom revealed I was legally male. After hearing us out, he leaned back in his chair. You're right, he said. The press can be relentless. But if Sabrina is recognized by the law as female, there's nowhere for the media to push that angle. Right now, you're still officially Scot, meaning it's open season for them. So the best move is to make Sabrina legit. He pulled out some papers. These are for a legal name change. If we file them, Sabrina will be female in the eyes of the state, and I may even get her birth certificate switched, depends on which judge we draw. That forces everyone, including schools, to treat her as a girl. But it also means she'll be expected to fully enroll as a female student with all that implies. If this is what you both want, I can get it rolling Monday. Mom looked to me, and I nodded, not trusting my voice. She wrote down my new name, Catherine Elaine, on the form, and we both signed. Sarah shook our hands, promising to handle everything. He also warned us not to speak to reporters. He'd do that on our behalf. On the way out, I realized that once my name officially became Catherine, I'd have no reason or excuse to go back to being Scott. However good or bad I was at presenting myself, I'd be living as a girl. Mom seemed more relieved than worried. After a few days, Evelyn's trial started. Knowing it would be short, Mom and I decided to attend on the day her verdict was expected. That morning, Mom suggested I visit a salon. I'd never been, so I said yes. Peggy came along with her mom. We spent a while flipping through hairstyle books until I chose one I thought was cute. The smells, the chatter, everything at the beauty shop was new and a bit overwhelming. The stylist shampooed my hair and cut it to match the photo I'd picked, while another technician filed and painted my nails in clear polish. When I finally looked in the mirror, I saw someone else. My hair was so perfectly shaped that my face looked softer, instantly more feminine. Mom then took me to get fitted for real breast, formed small ones that adhered to my skin and matched my tone. They had a bit of weight to them, pulling at my chest, so I had to adjust my breast straps. But it felt natural and surprisingly comforting. The next day, Evelyn's hearing was jammed with people. We sat near the front with families of the injured and slain officers on the opposite side, their faces etched with grief and anger. Evelyn was led in, shackled at her ankles, hands cuffed but freed for the trial. She wore a grey suit, yellow blouse, and light makeup, looking exhausted and red-eyed. The hush in the room was deafening as the judge arrived and the lawyers made their arguments. The evidence was overwhelming. Even the DA admitted it was likely Evelyn hadn't pulled the trigger, but felony murder meant she was complicit. Her lawyer tried everything, but it was useless. After an hour of jury deliberation, they came back with a guilty verdict for murdering a police officer. The judge, considering that Evelyn hadn't personally fired the shot, sentenced her to 35 years to life. With good behavior, she might be out in 25. By then she'd be 44, having spent more than half her life behind bars. Afterward, the bailiff ushered Mom and me to the judge's chambers, which smelled of lemon polish and cigar smoke. The judge said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but your daughter was with the wrong man at the worst time. I have no choice." Then he opened a small door, asking Mom and me to step into a side room where we found Evelyn waiting. We had half an hour together. Evelyn forced a faint smile when she saw me. "You look adorable, little sister," she whispered, hugging me. I hugged her back, tears in my eyes. She looked so lost in those manacles. "Never changed, Sabrina. Don't let anyone push you around." I wish I'd listened when people tried to warn me. Eventually, I left so Mom could speak to her alone. I went back to the judge, who showed me the name change paperwork. "Is this truly what you want?" he asked in a deep voice. "You're still so young." I told him the whole story: Dad's stroke, Evelyn's trouble, the way I felt inside my entire life, and the pact Mom and I made. He listened thoughtfully, asked again if I was sure, and when I said yes, he signed the forms. By the time Mom joined us, he handed her a copy of the legal order, shook our hands, and gave me his business card, telling me to call if I ever needed help. In a single day, he crushed our family's hopes with the verdict, then in another stroke of the pen granted me a lifeline. Outside, we found Peggy and her mother waiting. Mom let me break the news that the judge had officially changed my name. Peggy was so happy for me, she hugged me tight. Later, Mom, Peggy, and her mom went for dinner. That night, as I undressed, I realized I needed a permanent way to disguise any sign of Mr. Happy, especially with school coming up. Being in girls' gen class, or simply using the restrooms, I had to look like an average girl. I tried brainstorming alone but hit a dead end, so the next day I mentioned it to Mom as tactfully as I could. To my surprise, she admitted she'd been thinking about the same issue. She had a plan, but it made me nervous. Nonetheless, I agreed. She came home from the drugstore with a bag of supplies and a big sack of ice. In my bedroom, I undressed from the waist down and lay back, holding my legs up like a gymnast while Mom pressed the ice pack against me. I felt ridiculous, but I knew it was necessary. After what felt like ages, she removed the ice and manipulated things until, with minimal pain, she managed to tuck them away. When I stood up, my crotch looked exactly like a girl's. "Sabrina, we have to test your aim," Mom said, sending me to the bathroom to see if I could pee without spraying everywhere. It worked just fine, so I pulled my panties on with a proud grin. Mom slipped out, and I got dressed, relieved, but still a bit shell-shocked that she'd helped me do something so personal. A month later, Peggy and her family officially moved onto the street, while I adjusted to having nothing visible between my legs. I could wear tighter jeans, shorts, even a swimsuit, and as long as I added a bit of padding around my hips, no one could suspect a thing. That awareness filled me with confidence that I could start school without worrying about being caught. Mom and I picked out my back-to-school clothes, mostly skirts, blouses, jeans, and a few dresses. Every weekend we visited Dad, who never showed any sign of recognizing us, and Mom always left in tears. Evelyn was transferred out of state due to overcrowding, and I wouldn't see her again for over a year. By the time I turned 18, I had completed my transformation. Mentally, I'd long since become Sabrina. I started high school as a freshman girl, but I was already 15 by the time we moved. Just as Peggy predicted, once we hit that age, the boys were all about asking us out. I had no clue how to respond, but eventually I got a boyfriend, a tall, blonde giant who easily weighed 240. I looked like a little pixie next to him, but he was sweet and I liked his company. Mom also found someone special, and the light returned to her eyes for the first time in ages. My dad passed away during my first year of college, and Evelyn aged beyond her years in prison, but I'd grown into the person I was meant to be. Mom remarried after I graduated. I went on to nursing school, and in a twist I never saw coming, Peggy ended up marrying Neil. I remember the day I slipped off my nurse's scrubs for the last time, fresh from a long hospital shift, ready to see my mother's new house for the first time since I'd officially moved out. The spring air felt alive and bright, even though worry still clung to me like a restless ghost. Dad's death had left a hole in my heart, one I'd never fully mended, and Evelyn's sentence loomed over our family like a fractured shadow. Yet the future was full of promise. I was a freshly certified nurse, finally earning decent pay, and I had grown into the woman I always dreamed of being. Sometimes, on quiet afternoons, I'd open the closet in my tiny studio apartment and look at the old clothes that belonged to Scott. All of them were shoved in the far corner, quietly gathering dust. Each time I glanced at them, I felt a simultaneous pang of nostalgia and relief. Those garments reminded me of a timid, uncertain version of myself, one who hadn't yet found the courage to say, "This is who I am." Mom had remarried, and her new husband, Malcolm, had turned out to be a decent and gentle soul who treated me kindly. He was always respectful, never invasive, and seemed more focused on making Mom happy than challenging anything about me. Mom told me once that my father's death changed the way she saw the world, but she couldn't be weighed down by others' judgments of our family. It made sense. After so many brutal experiences, Dad's stroke and passing, Evelyn's imprisonment, we had learned life wasn't a neat series of steps, but a continuous balancing act, and the only thing that kept us moving was the hope we clung to. Peggy and I had stayed close, talking regularly. She was living only a few blocks away from me now, though we seldom found time to meet in person. She often joked about how we'd once roamed our old neighborhood, her scaring off the bully Neil while I watched in awe. "I was so determined to keep you safe," she'd tease, And now look, you're the one helping actual people heal. I'd usually laugh, but always felt a tug of sadness as well. Peggy had married Neil, something that still amazed me. It was a twist that no one would have predicted in our early teens. We'd all assumed Neil would either move away or stay a perpetual troublemaker on that old street, whistling catcalls or spinning his bike tires in front of unsuspecting strangers. Yet Neil had, according to Peggy, mellowed out over the years. He still carried that self-assured swagger, but under her influence, and maybe some hard lessons of his own, he'd started a small contracting business, found moderate success, and even talked about starting a family. The memory of him sprawled on the pavement after Peggy's correct move still made me smile, but I also recognized that life twists us into shapes we don't expect. One afternoon, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. It turned out to be from the prison where Evelyn was locked up. My stomach lurched, and I almost dropped the phone when I heard my sister's voice on the line. We hadn't spoken in months. It was too difficult for me to visit, and she rarely had the chance to call. Sabrina, she said she always made a point of calling me that I've been thinking a lot about things. My parole hearing's coming up next year, maybe sooner if my behavior stays good. Could we talk face to face soon? Maybe next weekend. Part of me wanted to say no. Facing her always brought back a tidal wave of guilt and anger. Guilt that I was free to discover myself and live a normal life while she remained behind bars, and anger that she had thrown away her future so foolishly. But I knew from the sound of her voice that she was reaching out, looking for the smallest bridge to a normal family connection. So I said yes, and that weekend I drove 3 hours through farmland and wooded roads to a grey, imposing correctional facility that looked as grim as the first time I'd visited. I entered the visiting area, feeling oddly calm, probably because I had nothing left to hide. The last time I saw Evelyn in a place like this, I'd been terrified people would discover I was not a natural-born girl. But now everything was legal, official, and I had the confidence of someone who had grown into her true self. Evelyn looked older, much older. At 30, she still held a hint of the rebellious spark from her teens, but there were lines of worry and hardship etched across her eyes and mouth. She embraced me awkwardly. Then we sat at a battered metal table, ignoring the echoes of crying babies and buzzing fluorescent lights. "You look great," she said, biting her lower lip. "Really grown up now." "Thanks. You look okay, considering." She laughed, a short bark of a laugh. "Yeah, hard to look glamorous in this jumpsuit." For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then she spoke quietly, as if testing the waters. "I've done a lot of thinking since I ended up here, Sabrina. I can't change the past, but I still believe in a future for myself. I'm on track for a parole hearing in about 1.5 years, but it depends on me keeping my nose clean and showing that I'm serious about turning my life around. Do you maybe think you can help me when I get out? I don't have many resources." I swallowed hard. I'm not sure what help I can offer. I can't magically fix anything, but I can give you some support. Maybe I can talk to Mom. She might let you stay with them for a while, or at least help you find a place. Evelyn let out a sigh, shoulders sagging. "That would be everything to me. I don't expect you to trust me. I messed up big time. Mom barely visits. You came today, so that's something. I want a chance." All at once, I felt tears brimming. This was my sister, the girl who once teased me about wearing her skirts and borrowing her makeup. The same sister who made a terrible mistake by trusting a reckless boyfriend and trying to rob a bank. She might have aged more than her years, but I could sense she was still Evelyn. I reached out and touched her hand, our fingertips resting lightly. "I believe in second chances," I said softly. "Though it's not exactly mine to give. You have to earn it, and you already know that." She nodded, eyes shining with emotion. We talked another half-hour about Dad, about life, about the mess she had made. Then her time ran out. That drive home felt lighter somehow, like I'd loosened a knot in my chest. I had no illusions that Evelyn's re-entry into the real world would be easy, but I promised to speak with Mom and see what we could do. That night, I rang Mom, who answered with a warm "Hi, sweetie." I imagined her with Malcolm, maybe sharing a glass of wine, the TV murmuring in the background. I explained my visit, relaying how regretful Evelyn sounded. Mom's silence on the other end scared me. Finally, she drew in a breath. "Your sister's done a number on this family," she said. "Your father never got over the shame, even if he never said it out loud. But I can't just abandon her. She's still my child. Let me talk to Malcolm and see what we can do. Maybe if she shows she's serious, we can arrange a small place for her or find a program that helps paralyze transition." It was more than I expected. After all, I still remembered the heartbreak Mom carried for months when Evelyn was first arrested. But maybe enough time had passed for the raw edges of that wound to start scarring over. We agreed to talk again soon, and I hung up, exhausted yet oddly hopeful. A few days later, I was startled by a knock at my apartment door. Peeking through the peephole, I saw a figure with short blonde hair and a nervous fidget to his stance. Neil. I opened the door slowly, my pulse suddenly racing. We hadn't spoken in person in ages. When we were younger, he was a nuisance, a bully, a braggart, and I never pictured him on my doorstep, especially not now. "Hey, Sabrina," he said, offering a crooked smile. "Mind if I come in?" I stepped aside, uncertain. "Sure, what brings you here?" Neil looked around, nodding at the tidy living room with a single couch and a small TV stand. He perched on the couch's edge, hands clasped. "It's about Peggy," he began, clearing his throat. "We've been having problems." My heart dropped at his tone. He sounded absolutely grim. "We married young, you know. I love her, but we argue. A lot. And she started hinting that maybe I haven't changed as much as I think I have." He rubbed the back of his neck, brow furrowed. "I was never a saint, but I've tried to be better. And I remember how you and Peggy were inseparable. She admired your courage." "She's your wife," I said carefully. "She must still see something good in you if she married you." He stared at the floor. "She does. But sometimes we fight over the smallest things, like me staying out late with the guys, or her wanting to go back to school. She says I still think I can control her. Maybe I do, subconsciously. She's been unhappy, and I'm worried she's considering leaving me." I wasn't sure how I could help him. We were never close. I'd never even forgiven him fully for his cruel remarks when we were kids. Yet the fear in his eyes looked real. Reluctantly, I offered him a mug of coffee, and we talked for a while. He was seeking a sign of support or guidance. Strange how the years had turned me into someone other people leaned on. Maybe my time in nursing had given me more empathy. Eventually, I told him Peggy's strong. If she's upset, it means she wants you to meet her halfway. Don't let your pride stop you from really listening. And if you need therapy, there's no shame in that, believe me. I've had a few sessions myself, and it's helped." He nodded, blinking against tears I suspected he'd never let himself show in front of anyone. I gave him a small pat on the shoulder, and he thanked me awkwardly before leaving. After he was gone, I felt conflicted. The old me would have taken pleasure in seeing him squirm, but I'd learned too well how life can yank the rug out from under you. Nobody is purely the bad guy or the good guy. We all get broken pieces and must figure out a way to glue them together. Days melted into weeks. I spent long hours at the hospital, working with patients recovering from surgery or fighting through intense chemotherapy. Watching them struggle taught me how precious every moment is. My phone calls with Evelyn continued at a slow, tentative pace, and she mentioned that she'd started a GED class. She wanted to earn some credentials so she wouldn't be useless once she got out. Meanwhile, Mom told me that Malcolm had agreed to help find Evelyn a parole transition program if her hearing went well. It felt like we were forging a fragile path forward, a second chance, if only she could keep her promise to stay on track. Peggy called me one morning, her voice thick with tears. She confessed she and Neil had a serious fight. Nothing physical, but enough emotional turmoil to make her pack an overnight bag and go to her parents' place. She said she still loved Neil, but felt stifled, like she was forced into an obedient wife's role. "You were always so independent," she sniffled, "whether you were Scott or Sabrina. I need that too. Neil, he tries, But then he reverts to that controlling streak, telling me how I should live. I listened closely, offering comfort. He came to see me recently, I told her. He's scared. He doesn't want to lose you. Her breath caught. Then why won't he understand I need my own life, not just to be his sidekick? It was a question only Neil could answer, but it reminded me that relationships require mutual respect and trust. After we hung up, I wondered if they could find a counselor or a support group, something to mediate their dynamic before it was too late. I still remembered how protective Peggy had been of me when we were younger, and it was painful to see her so vulnerable. Season by season, the puzzle pieces began to shift. Evelyn continued in her he classes, sounding more stable each time we spoke. She told me about a grief workshop she attended in prison, explaining that losing Dad without having a final moment of closure had haunted her. She heard a rumor that with good behavior, she might be moved to a lower security facility in 6 months, which would fast-track her parole hearing. Mom tentatively planned a trip to see her, though I knew it would be emotional for them both. Meanwhile, Neil and Peggy finally went to couples therapy. The first sessions were bumpy. Peggy texted me after one particularly rough argument, saying Neil had stormed out. But time and effort seemed to wear down his stubbornness, and each subsequent conversation grew more hopeful, as if they were learning that neither had to dominate the other. I realized how far I'd come in letting go of old bitterness. Hearing Neil's sincere attempts to do better, I felt a strange sense of relief. If he could shed his baggage, I could release mine. I'd spent so much energy worrying about the people around me that I neglected my own desires. When a pediatric ward position opened up at the hospital where I worked, something sparked inside me. As a child, I was that shy kid who needed acceptance. I felt drawn to helping kids find comfort, especially those dealing with confusion or fear about who they are. So I applied, and a few weeks later, I got the offer. My new job would involve working with chronically ill children, many of whom faced long hospital stays. It was challenging, but it felt like a calling. At last, on a cool autumn day, my mother invited me to dinner at her home, a cozy place with a wide backyard. The leaves were changing color, swirling gold and crimson along the fence line. Malcolm greeted me with a hug, Mom beaming beside him. We chatted over a meal of roast chicken, catching up. She told me she'd spoken with Evelyn's case manager, who said Evelyn had an excellent chance of parole in 9 months if she stayed on her best behavior. I left feeling so full of conflicting emotions: relief, anticipation, and a cautious optimism that maybe, just maybe, we could find a new beginning. I drove home under a sky streaked with stars, reminded of how, years ago, I'd crouched behind my bedroom door, terrified of being discovered in a dress, never imagining I would become a nurse and be fully recognized as Sabrina. Maybe the tragedies we endured, the heartbreak of Dad's illness, the humiliation of Evelyn's crime, the turmoil of forging my own identity were catalysts for our family to rebuild, each piece altered but somehow fitted into a stronger whole. Then, one evening, I got a simple text message from Peggy. He wrote me a letter. A real letter on paper. It was beautiful and honest. I'm giving us another shot. It made me think of how we all deserve second chances if we genuinely work to become better. Neil had been forced to face his flaws and adjust. Evelyn was behind bars, but she was fighting for a new direction. Mom had grieved deeply and discovered love again, and I'd put aside the shame that once paralyzed me. 1 month later, I was finishing a shift in the pediatric ward, stepping out into the hallway as the clock ticked toward midnight. My phone buzzed with a message from a number saved under prison caller ID. My heart jolted, but this time there was no fear. It was Evelyn, her voice quivering with excitement. "They approved it," she whispered. "I'm moving to the lower security facility next week, and if things go right, I might be out for good in under a year." "Sabrina, thank you." In that moment, I felt the subtle hum of the hospital's fluorescent lights, heard the hum of distant medical equipment, smelled the antiseptic and faint lavender scent from a passing nurse's perfume. Life was fragile all around me, and yet unbelievably resilient. I closed my eyes and thought of Dad, of the little boy I used to be, the mother who told me to embrace my dreams, The sister who once called me an adorable little sister, and the best friend who had taught me about loyalty and self-defense against bullies, only to marry that same bully who was now trying his best to change. It seemed like a patchwork tapestry of sorrow, hope, mistakes, and transformation, stitched together with threads of resilience. I left the hospital that night feeling a rush of gratitude for every broken piece of our story. If I'd learned one thing, it was that life spins in circles, sometimes wide, sometimes tight, and each loop, however fraught, can lead us forward. There was still so much to be done. Evelyn's freedom wasn't guaranteed, Peggy and Neil's marriage needed ongoing care, and I continued to refine my own place in this beautiful, unpredictable world. Yet for the first time, I truly believed our family, though dented and bruised, would find a way to heal. Perhaps that was what Dad would have wanted to see us bend, but never break. To see us confront our mistakes, cultivate forgiveness, and fight for who we were meant to be. Stepping into the cool night air, I glanced up at a crescent moon. My reflection in the hospital's darkened windows revealed a confident young woman, breast forms and all, who had accepted every inch of her journey. I whispered a silent thank you to the universe, half expecting no reply, then smiled as I remembered Evelyn's parting words to me during my last visit. "Never let reality get in the way of your dreams." She'd said it ironically, but I'd come to understand those words as deeply true. Sometimes reality breaks us down, and sometimes it's the very soil where our dreams can truly take root and grow. Life can be brutal, but it can also be a path where, if you chase the dreams in your heart, you'll eventually find a win. I did.